For centuries, skeptics and scholars alike have scrutinized the Bible, questioning whether its ancient accounts could possibly be true. Was this sacred text merely a collection of myths and legends passed down through generations, or did it contain genuine historical records that could withstand the test of time? Deep beneath the sands of the Middle East, archaeologists have been uncovering startling evidence that challenges our assumptions about this ancient book. What they've discovered is nothing short of remarkable, revealing that many biblical accounts, once dismissed as fiction, are actually supported by hard evidence carved in stone, preserved in clay, and buried in the ruins of forgotten civilizations. The Bible stands as one of history's most influential texts, containing not only religious teachings, but also historical accounts that have been subject to extensive archaeological and scholarly investigation. While debates continue about many biblical narratives, numerous facts mentioned in the Bible have been confirmed through archaeological discoveries, historical records, and scientific research, providing fascinating insights into the ancient world and the accuracy of biblical documentation. These discoveries have transformed our understanding of biblical history, revealing a text that demonstrates remarkable historical precision in its descriptions of ancient peoples, places, and events. Archaeological discoveries have repeatedly validated biblical accounts of ancient cities, peoples, and events that were once considered legendary. The existence of King David, once questioned by some scholars who suggested he was merely a mythical figure, was dramatically confirmed through the discovery of the Tel Dan Stele in 1993. This 9th century BC stone inscription, found in northern Israel, contains the first known reference to the House of David outside the Bible, using the exact phrase "House of David" in ancient Aramaic. The inscription describes a military victory over the kingdoms of Israel and Judah, providing independent confirmation of the Davidic dynasty exactly as described in biblical accounts. Similarly, the Pilate stone discovered in Caesarea Maritima in 1961 confirmed the existence of Pontius Pilate as prefect of Judea, exactly as described in the New Testament. This limestone inscription, dating to the 1st century AD, bears Pilate's name and title, settling decades of scholarly debate about whether this crucial figure in Christian history actually existed. The discovery was particularly significant because it provided the first archaeological evidence for Pilate's existence outside of literary sources, demonstrating the historical reliability of the Gospel accounts. The Pool of Bethesda, mentioned in the Gospel of John as having 5 porticos where Jesus healed a paralyzed man, was long considered fictional by critics who claimed John had invented architectural details to enhance his narrative. However, excavations in Jerusalem revealed a pool with exactly 5 porticos, matching the biblical description perfectly. The archaeological evidence shows that this pool was indeed a place where sick people gathered, hoping for healing, just as described in the biblical account. The discovery included evidence of the pool's religious significance and its association with healing practices in 1st century Jerusalem. The biblical account of the destruction of Jerusalem by the Babylonians in 586 BC has been corroborated by multiple independent sources that paint a vivid picture of this catastrophic event. The Babylonian chronicles, discovered in the late 19th century, provide independent confirmation of Nebuchadnezzar's siege and capture of Jerusalem, recording the exact dates and circumstances of the conquest. These cuneiform tablets, written by Babylonian scribes, describe the siege of Jerusalem and the capture of King Jehoiakim, matching the biblical account with remarkable precision. Archaeological evidence from the city of David shows a layer of destruction dating to this exact period, complete with arrowheads, evidence of intense burning, and household items abandoned in haste. Excavations have uncovered bullae, small clay seals that were used to seal documents, bearing the names of biblical figures mentioned in the books of Jeremiah and Kings. One particularly significant find was a bulla bearing the name of Gemariah son of Shaphan, a scribe mentioned in Jeremiah chapter 36, providing direct physical evidence of individuals described in the biblical text. The exile of the Jewish people to Babylon, described extensively in biblical texts, is supported by Babylonian records that document the presence of Jewish communities in Mesopotamia during this period. The Murashu archive, discovered in Nippur, contains hundreds of cuneiform tablets that record business transactions involving Jewish exiles. many bearing distinctly Hebrew names. These documents provide detailed evidence of Jewish life in Babylon during the exile period, confirming the biblical account of the deportation and settlement of Jewish communities in Mesopotamia. The existence of the Hittite Empire, frequently mentioned in the Old Testament as a major power that interacted with Israel, was once dismissed by scholars as biblical fiction. Critics argued that no such empire had ever existed, and that the biblical references were either errors or later inventions. However, archaeological excavations beginning in the early 20th century uncovered the vast Hittite civilization centered in modern-day Turkey, completely validating the biblical references to this powerful ancient empire. The discovery of thousands of cuneiform tablets at the Hittite capital of Hattusa provided detailed records of Hittite history, culture, and international relations, confirming their significant role in ancient Near Eastern politics, as suggested by biblical accounts. These tablets revealed that the Hittites were indeed a major imperial power that controlled much of Anatolia and northern Syria, exactly as implied by biblical references. The Hittite legal codes discovered in these excavations show striking similarities to biblical legal traditions, suggesting cultural exchanges that align with biblical descriptions of interactions between Israel and the Hittite peoples. Biblical descriptions of ancient customs and practices have been validated through archaeological and historical research in ways that demonstrate the text's intimate knowledge of ancient Near Eastern culture. The practice of levirate marriage, described in the Book of Ruth, where a man marries his deceased brother's widow, has been confirmed through ancient Near Eastern legal texts that show this was indeed a common practice throughout the region. The Nutsi tablets, discovered in Iraq, contain detailed records of such marriages and their legal implications, providing a broader context for understanding the biblical narrative. The biblical account of crucifixion as a method of Roman execution has been supported by archaeological evidence that reveals the horrific reality of this punishment. The discovery of crucified remains in Jerusalem, dating to the 1st century AD, provided the first physical evidence of crucifixion, showing that victims were indeed nailed to crosses as described in the Gospels. The skeletal remains showed evidence of nails driven through the wrists and ankles, matching the biblical description of Jesus' crucifixion and demonstrating the historical accuracy of the Gospel accounts. The practice of storing documents in clay jars, mentioned in the book of Jeremiah, was confirmed spectacularly by the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were preserved in exactly this manner. Jeremiah 32:14 specifically mentions putting documents in clay jars so they would last for a long time, and the Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered in clay jars in caves near Qumran, had indeed survived for over 2,000 years. This discovery not only validated the biblical description, but also provided the oldest known copies of biblical texts, demonstrating the careful preservation of biblical literature over millennia. The New Testament's detailed descriptions of 1st century Palestine have been remarkably accurate according to archaeological findings, revealing an author's intimate knowledge of the political, social, and geographical realities of the time. The Gospel of Luke's reference to Lysanias as Tetrarch of Abilene was once considered an error by scholars who knew of only one Lysanias who had died decades before Jesus was born. However, inscriptions discovered in the 20th century confirmed that a different Lysanias was indeed Tetrarch of Abilene during the time of Jesus, demonstrating Luke's historical accuracy and attention to detail. The biblical description of the Temple in Jerusalem, including its various courts and architectural features, has been supported by archaeological excavations and contemporary historical accounts by writers like Josephus. The discovery of the temple warning inscription, which warned Gentiles not to enter the inner courts of the temple under penalty of death, matches exactly the biblical and historical descriptions of temple regulations. Archaeological work around the Temple Mount has revealed the massive stones used in the temple's construction, some weighing over 500 tons, confirming the biblical descriptions of the temple's grandeur and the enormous scale of its construction. Biblical accounts of natural phenomena have also found scientific support that suggests the authors were describing real events they had witnessed or learned about through reliable sources. The description of the Jordan River being blocked during Joshua's crossing has parallels in documented instances where earthquakes have temporarily dammed the river, Historical records from the region show that the Jordan has been blocked by landslides caused by earthquakes at least 8 times in recorded history. Most recently in 1927, when the river was dammed for over 21 hours, allowing people to cross on foot. The biblical account of a long day during Joshua's battle, while interpreted differently by various scholars, has been studied in relation to ancient astronomical records and unusual celestial events. Some researchers have proposed that the account describes a solar eclipse or other astronomical phenomenon that would have been visible in the region during the appropriate time period. While this remains a subject of ongoing investigation, the detailed astronomical records kept by ancient civilizations provide a framework for understanding how such events might have been recorded and interpreted. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah has been linked by some researchers to evidence of ancient catastrophic events in the Dead Sea region, though this remains a subject of ongoing investigation. Archaeological surveys in the region have revealed evidence of widespread destruction at sites dating to the appropriate time period, including layers of ash and evidence of intense heat that could suggest a natural disaster of enormous proportions. The high salt content of the Dead Sea region and evidence of seismic activity provide plausible explanations for the biblical account of these cities' destruction. The historical accuracy of biblical genealogies has been partially confirmed through archaeological discoveries that have verified the existence of numerous individuals mentioned in these family trees. The existence of many kings mentioned in biblical genealogies has been verified through independent historical sources that had no connection to biblical traditions. The Assyrian records, for instance, mention several Israelite and Judahite kings exactly as they appear in biblical accounts, including Ahab, Jehu, Hezekiah, and Manasseh. The timing and sequence of these reigns, as recorded in the Bible, align closely with Assyrian chronological records, demonstrating the reliability of biblical historical chronology. The Black Obelisk of Shalmaneser III, discovered in 1846, depicts King Jehu of Israel paying tribute to the Assyrian king, providing both visual and textual evidence of this biblical figure. The obelisk shows Jehu bowing before Shalmaneser and describes him as son of Omri, using the same terminology found in the biblical accounts. This discovery provided the first image of a biblical king and confirmed the historical relationship between Israel and Assyria as described in the books of Kings. Ancient trade routes and international relations described in the Bible have been confirmed through archaeological evidence that reveals the extensive commercial networks of the ancient world. The biblical account of Solomon's trade relationships with various nations, including the famous visit of the Queen of Sheba, aligns with archaeological evidence of extensive trade networks in the ancient Near East during the 10th century BC. Excavations have revealed luxury goods from distant lands in Israelite archaeological sites, including ivory, gold, and exotic spices, supporting biblical descriptions of international commerce. The port city of Etzion Geber, mentioned in the Bible as Solomon's naval base on the Red Sea, has been identified through archaeological excavations that revealed extensive copper smelting operations and evidence of maritime trade. The discovery of ship anchors, foreign pottery, and industrial installations at the site confirms the biblical description of this location as a major commercial center during Solomon's reign. The scale of the copper production facilities suggests the kind of wealth that would have supported the biblical descriptions of Solomon's extensive building projects and international trade. The biblical description of writing systems and literacy in the ancient world has been validated by archaeological discoveries that show writing was more widespread in ancient Israel than previously thought. The existence of widespread literacy in ancient Israel, suggested by biblical accounts of written laws and records, has been supported by the discovery of numerous inscribed pottery shards and other written materials from biblical period sites. The Khirbet Yafa Ostrakon, discovered in 2008, contains Hebrew text dating to the time of King David, providing evidence that sophisticated writing systems were in use during the biblical period. The biblical mention of various writing materials, including papyrus, parchment, and clay tablets, accurately reflects the writing practices of the ancient Near East. Archaeological discoveries have confirmed that all of these materials were indeed used for writing in the biblical period, and the Bible's descriptions of their specific uses align with archaeological evidence. The discovery of the Ketef Hinnom silver amulets, dating to the 7th century BC, contains the earliest known biblical text outside the Bible itself, showing that biblical passages were being written and preserved exactly as described in the biblical accounts. Medical and agricultural practices mentioned in the Bible have been confirmed through historical research that reveals sophisticated knowledge of health and farming techniques. The biblical dietary laws, once considered purely religious, have been recognized by some scholars as having practical health benefits in the ancient world. The prohibition against eating pork, for example, makes sense in a hot climate where pork spoils quickly and can carry dangerous parasites. The biblical emphasis on hand-washing and quarantine procedures for infectious diseases demonstrates knowledge of hygiene practices that were ahead of their time. The agricultural practices described in biblical texts, including crop rotation and sabbatical years for land rest, align with sound agricultural principles that have been validated by modern farming science. The biblical instruction to let land lie fallow every 7th year helps prevent soil depletion and allows nutrients to replenish, a practice that modern agriculture has confirmed as beneficial for long-term soil health. Archaeological evidence from ancient Israel shows that these agricultural practices were indeed followed, with field systems that show evidence of planned crop rotation and periodic fallow periods. The Bible's descriptions of ancient architectural techniques have been supported by archaeological findings that reveal sophisticated building methods in the ancient world. The construction methods described for Solomon's temple, including the use of dressed stone and cedar wood, match construction techniques found at other ancient Near Eastern sites. The biblical account describes stones being prepared at the quarry so that no hammer or chisel was heard at the temple site, and excavations have indeed found evidence of pre-cut stones that were shaped away from construction sites. The biblical account of the construction of ancient cities, including the use of casemate walls and 6-chambered gates, has been confirmed through excavations at sites like Hazor, Megiddo, and Gaza. These sites, all mentioned in the Bible as cities fortified by Solomon, show identical architectural features, including the distinctive 6-chambered gates and casemate wall systems. The uniformity of these architectural features across different sites suggests a coordinated building program, exactly as described in the biblical account of Solomon's construction projects. The biblical descriptions of water management systems have been validated by archaeological discoveries of sophisticated engineering projects. The tunnel built by King Hezekiah to bring water into Jerusalem during the Assyrian siege, described in the books of Kings and Chronicles, was discovered in 1838 and found to match the biblical description exactly. The Siloam inscription found in the tunnel describes its construction and matches the biblical account of this engineering marvel. The tunnel is over 1,700 feet long and was carved through solid rock, demonstrating the advanced engineering capabilities described in the biblical text. Ancient weights and measures mentioned in the Bible have been confirmed through archaeological discoveries of actual weights and measuring devices from the biblical period. The discovery of stone weights inscribed with Hebrew terms for various measures, including the shekel, has validated the biblical descriptions of ancient measurement systems. These weights show standardization across different sites, suggesting a unified system of weights and measures exactly as implied by biblical law codes. The biblical account of metalworking and craftsmanship has been supported by archaeological evidence of sophisticated metallurgical techniques in ancient Israel. Excavations have revealed evidence of advanced copper mining and smelting operations, including sites in the Arabah Valley that show large-scale copper production during the biblical period. The discovery of sophisticated furnaces and slag heaps demonstrates the kind of metalworking capabilities that would have been necessary for the biblical descriptions of the bronze and gold objects used in the temple and other religious contexts. Military tactics and weapons described in the Bible have been confirmed through archaeological discoveries and historical records from the ancient world. The biblical descriptions of siege warfare, including the use of battering rams and siege towers, match archaeological evidence from ancient Near Eastern military campaigns. The Lachish reliefs, carved by the Assyrians to commemorate their conquest of the Judean city of Lachish, depict siege techniques exactly as described in biblical accounts of Assyrian military campaigns. The biblical account of the Babylonian siege of Jerusalem includes detailed descriptions of siege works and military tactics that have been confirmed by archaeological evidence. Excavations around Jerusalem have revealed remains of the siege walls built by the Babylonians, including evidence of the circumvallation that surrounded the city during the siege. The discovery of arrowheads and other military equipment from this period provides physical evidence of the battle described in the biblical text. Religious practices and rituals mentioned in the Bible have been illuminated by archaeological discoveries that show how ancient worship was conducted. The discovery of ancient altars, incense stands, and ritual objects has provided insight into the religious practices described in biblical texts. The Tel Dan altar, discovered in northern Israel, matches biblical descriptions of altar construction and provides evidence of the type of worship practices described in the Old Testament. The biblical descriptions of ancient festivals and religious observances have been supported by evidence from other ancient Near Eastern cultures that shows similar practices were widespread in the region. The discovery of ancient calendars and religious texts from neighboring cultures demonstrates that the biblical festivals were part of a broader pattern of religious observance that was common throughout the ancient world. While many aspects of the Bible remain matters of faith and interpretation, the numerous confirmed historical and archaeological facts demonstrate the text's deep connection to the ancient world it describes. These discoveries continue to provide valuable insights into biblical times and help scholars better understand the historical context of biblical narratives. The ongoing archaeological work in the Middle East promises to shed even more light on the historical accuracy of biblical accounts, making this an exciting field of continued discovery and research. From ancient kings and empires to everyday customs and practices, the Bible's historical details have repeatedly been validated by independent sources, establishing its significant value as a historical document while respecting its primary role as a religious text. These confirmed facts serve as bridges between ancient history and modern understanding, offering tangible connections to the world of biblical times that continue to inform our knowledge of the past. The accumulation of archaeological evidence over the past century has transformed our understanding of the Bible from a purely religious text to a document that contains remarkable historical accuracy in its descriptions of the ancient world, peoples, and events that shaped the course of human civilization.